You're listening to the Grind Line Podcast.
What's up, and welcome to another episode of the Grind Line Podcast. I'm your host, Greg. You're listening to episode 328. I'm here tonight with Ryan, but also with Tony Ferrari from the Hockey News. What's up, Tony? How are you?
I'm good. Spring is here and my camera continues to jump on and off, which is great. So we're having a good time. Baseball season started. The Toronto Maple Leafs are eliminated from the playoffs. All the spring traditions are here.
There's only three things that are certain in life, and that is death, taxes, and the Toronto Maple Leafs not winning the Stanley Cup. It is a curse. But since we have Tony on, there's only one thing we could talk about, right? And it is the NHL Draft. And I guess off the top, Tony, what are your feelings on this year's draft? Is it decent? Is it good? Like, where's your like cutoff line?
It's a weird draft. I think number 1 and 2, Mason, Schaefer, you have legitimate number 1 overall pick guys there. Both of them come with their kind of inherent risks. Schaefer's a guy that you're like, well, he played like 17 games this year, but all 17 pretty much were at a very high level. And then you have Michael Misa, who's like just a rock solid, does everything really well. I know everyone gets on guys that are kind of a jack of all trades, but Michael Misa's like a jack of all trades, is a master of like more than a few of them. So it's really fun to watch him play, but it falls off pretty hard after that. I think James Haggins is a really skilled forward. Victor Eklund plays with all the energy of a 6'5" guy in a 5'11" frame. You have Anton Frundell, who's faced a ton of injuries over the last 2 years, but when he's on, he's like a Leo Carlson level kind of guy. And then you start to fall off, right, with Roger McQueen and Caleb Denoyer and a bunch of other guys who are more than likely going to be very good NHLers, but you're going to be drafting them 4 or 5, maybe even third overall. And you're like, yeah, sweet, I got a middle 6, like good, solid dude, but I don't know if I'm stoked about getting that at third overall this year.
So are you saying after the couple, you get a guy? That's what you get? Like, this is a guy?
There's a lot of guys from like 5 to 25 maybe that are like just dudes who you're fairly confident will play, or you can justify taking the swing on their skill or their upside because of the rest of the draft class. And you'll probably get a dude who's a solid bottom 9 forward. But I really think there's maybe 2 or 3 legitimate top line and really only 1 top pair defenseman in this draft class. So who knows? We talk about the 2017 draft. Nico Hischier is one of the most underrated players in the league. Nolan Patrick obviously had his issues, but then you had Cale Makar and Elias Pettersson, who were top of the lineup guys. One of the best defensemen in the league in Cale Makar, and you have solid players down that draft, right? So maybe we get a guy like Mrtka who really kind of pops out and is better than we all expect. But there's a lot of guys who are like, yeah, if he fixes this one glaring thing, or if he has all these tools and he can put them all together, maybe he's really good. But it usually takes a while to put all those things together. And if you haven't really even started doing it at 17, 18 years old, it may not fully come together the way people hope.
Yeah, you're betting a lot on hope at that point. But I would say before Ryan starts licking windows on prospect terminology and stuff, Ryan, what would you say the Red Wings' biggest need is in the prospect pool besides maybe everything?
If you're looking at the roster as it is, I mean, so you can look at Tony's point. Unfortunately, we've had way too many of these conversations the last couple of seasons. Who's going to be your standout guy out of what they've got? We know that there's an MBN, yet an ASP. We've got the alphabet soup making their way through. Nate Danielson. I think you got the middle lockdown. You still are lacking a true elite scorer. You're still lacking, I mean, outside of Ed and Mo, a solid lockdown defenseman. You could argue Johansson has tried to make his way in as defensive defenseman. Edmondson is getting there. Seider is your guy, but you still need more. We know that with Grand Rapids, for instance, this season, they struggled heavily defensively. Is that maybe what we saw as a kind of a trickle down effect from Detroit going down to the junior level for them? Maybe, I don't know. But as a whole, with what they got to do, goaltending, I think, is the most comfortable we've been ever. And that's with 2-3 guys, argue, if you want to talk about Bednar. outside of Kosa and Augustine. So really, to me, if we're looking for a project, you need goal scoring and depth goal scoring. I mean, Tony, you already mentioned that a lot of these guys, especially when you get 5 to 20, you're looking at a middle six group. To me, that sounds great. You're not in a spot because we have, of course, can't win anything, and that's nice when it comes to the lottery. So Detroit's just looking for what they can take, but they need someone to. You mentioned a Heischer, you mentioned Makar, who can actually be that diamond in the rough pick. At actually, I don't even know what Detroit is. What is Greg? What's Detroit at, Tony? Who knows it?
14,
13.
Yeah,
13. Yeah,
13. That's
they
what.
fell.
That's right.
They fell in the draft lottery even that late.
Oh wait,
which
that's
is
the other thing that's guaranteed besides death taxes and the Maple Leafs not winning the cup is the Red Wings falling in the draft lottery.
So to me, it's just you hope that someone falls, and really not even the word fall is probably the right word, because you hope that there's someone that was maybe overlooked at that point that falls into their lap. We go back to Zadina with him falling in that year with Quinn Hughes. I know, yeah, I know. I'm going there, Greg. Don't worry about it. There's so many what if moments, but in a way, you hope that somebody maybe that possibly could have went higher, they do fall, but it's not for reasons unknown, and they can make an impact within a year or 2 years. That's best case scenario, because whoever we're getting, we're not going to see this season. So we just have to accept the fact that we're 2 to 3 years, potentially 4, hopefully not 4 years from seeing this person.
Yeah, so I'm gonna start to throw some names out. We'll go back and forth, Tony. I want to start with one that I really like, and this is the guy who I first started when I'm like, I'm gonna make a list of names and see who I like. It's Lyndon Lackovic, 6'4", 190-pound winger from the Moose Jaw Warriors in the WHL. 47 games played. He went 27, 31, 58 points. He is as high as number 8 from you and as low as number 30 from Jason Bukala at Sportsnet. My bullet points on him after watching tape, super scary shot, very accurate. Sneaky guy. He really easily finds open ice. He's a more than adequate passer. Extremely calm with the puck. The only thing watching him is I think he needs to be a little bit more physical. But when Ryan mentioned someone like you want to take a guy that maybe has a really high upside scoring, I think Lackovic is one of the most accurate people that I watched. Really exciting player.
I'm so glad you brought up Lackovic first. This guy is one of my guys of this draft class. I absolutely love this kid. I joked earlier in the season because everyone was so high on Roger McQueen early in the year. And I kept joking in like October, November, December. I'm like, guys, like Lyndon Lackovic is everything you guys think Roger McQueen is. This super skilled, great shot, like big forward who has all of the physical tools. But yeah, he does lack the physicality a little bit. But I mean, when you're 6'3", 6'4", that'll probably come around. Like I look at a guy like Matthew Nyes on the Leafs in his draft year, and he started to get that physicality towards the end of the year, but they questioned his offensive upside. I think Lackovic is almost on the similar path, but he's already got that offensive upside. He's got the skill, the shot. I do a series called Game Tape where I watch video with these players, and they're all on YouTube on the Scouting YouTube channel. And I did one with Lackovic this year, and I don't like trashing guys, so I won't. But Lackovic was my absolute favorite of the entire draft class so far this year. The intelligence that this kid showed, the kind of awareness that he had, just little things, kind of even talking about going in on a 2-on-1, and yeah, I have a shot here, but my teammate had a better shot, so I made sure to get the puck to them, or I got a little bit too deep for where I'd like to take shots from, and I had a trailer, so I made sure to hit them, or hey, I knew the only option was to shoot off the pad and get the puck to the center of the ice to have someone crashing the net score. Or he goes, I know I have the shot right above the goalie's pad, right under the blocker. I can hit that spot if I can. And if it goes wide, I have a defender on the other side. Like he's breaking down little minute parts of the play. And I'm like, this is what I want from my players. A guy that understands how to not only diagnose play, but really just kind of break it down on a minute level, like a minute level, and really showcase the fact that he's thinking every single second he's out on the ice. And it's coming naturally to him out there. Like he's not a guy that looks like he's thinking on the ice. And so when you get that, and you get a guy that has the frame, has the skate, I think he's a fantastic skater, especially for his size. I know like people talk about, oh, he's a good skater for 6'4". No, like Lackovic is just a good skater. Like he can fly by defenders. The physicality will come, I think. I don't know if he's ever going to be this kind of grind and mash and beat a guy up kind of player, but you don't really need that if you're 6'4" and you're able to kind of dance around guys. It's really fun to watch Lackovic play. The physicality is the weak area. Sometimes around the boards you can get beat a little bit, but man, like when this kid's on, there is not really many WHLers, if any, that I would take over Lynn Lackovic.
I think when you're talking about, even from a Red Wings perspective, a guy that's big that we had a problem with earlier not being as physical, that really learned how to do it and even improve this year, is someone like an Elmer Soderblom, who is a huge like behemoth of a man, but he played like he was 5'11". And this season, he's gained the confidence. He's gained the confidence in his game where he knows he can shoot. He knows he can pass. The thing he needed to work on was being more steady and being more physical. And when you've got especially when you're 6'4", you've got such a longer stick than most other people, that going into a corner and poking a puck out should be easier for you. You just have to be confident in your ability to do it. And the way you talk about his hockey IQ sounds like a perfect like Steve Yzerman type pick.
Yeah.
It sounds like a Marco Casper like approach to the game, where he's constantly thinking about it, how he needs to improve, what he should have done and maybe didn't do at the time. It just sounds like the kind of guy where Yzerman would have a conversation with him, go, this is absolutely our dude.
And the thing with Lackovic too is I look at him and I look at the way the Red Wings have drafted, and they go for the Kaspers, they go for the Danielsons, they go for those style of players. And I think Lackovic is up that same mold, but the skill and the offensive ability is a little bit higher end than those guys, in my opinion. I think if Lackovic is a guy that's there at 13 and they don't jump on him, I think they're probably making a mistake, unless somebody like a Porter Martone or a Victor Eklund fall. I think Lackovic really would be kind of the ideal pick at 13 there. But you question maybe the physicality. You wonder if he'll ever develop that side of his game. I'm willing to take a guy who has so much out of his game, and I talk about all the time that I love a physical player. I want a guy going out there and throwing hits, but I need them to be functional. Like I hate a player who's just chasing hits and going for kind of physicality that means absolutely nothing. Not to center him out necessarily, but a guy like Keishon Aitchison, who a lot of people have really high on their boards, I have him much lower because when he is physical, in my opinion, I see a lot of it going to waste. I think he has the physicality that you want, but he's throwing it after the play. He's great he's so annoying after the whistles. The Florida Panthers would love this guy. Like the Boston Bruins would love this guy, but he gets away with it after the whistles, and he does it after the whistles. And in the game, sometimes he's not able to keep up to the pace and use his physicality functionally. So if you're just waiting on a guy to develop that physicality, at least you have the fallback of the skill, the skating, the mobility, and like you said, the long stick, the other things that he can use to kind of work himself out of trouble, because he's not a dumb kid. Like this is a smart hockey player. So if he's able to kind of diagnose and break things down and go, well, maybe I should have made this pass, or maybe I should do this instead of this, he's going to be able to go, well, maybe when I go into the corner, this is how I can leverage my size. Or maybe he doesn't go ever and go blow guys up, but he goes in there and he's able to flip his hips or just kind of wedge himself under a player or do different things like that in bring a different kind of physicality that isn't the blowing dudes up in the corners or along the boards.
Yeah, out muscle.
Yeah.
Would you kind of compare him a bit to Pierre-Luc Dubois? Outside, I mean, we know that he's a shit disturber now, but coming in with Columbus, he tried to be more of a classy, more finesse style player. And with that size and what I kind of have seen from Linden, like the way he can bring it in tight, he's got a quick release. He's not afraid to be unselfish with the puck, and the speed's there. We kind of saw that with PLD, which kind of maybe shocked people the way that he was brought in how he was drafted with Columbus. So it kind of reminds me a bit of him in a way.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities there because PLD did have to develop that physical edge. And I remember like he had a couple series early on. I think there was against Toronto when he shut down Matthews, which, I mean, whoever plays against him in playoffs kind of does lately. But it's one of those things where he's PLD early, especially early in his career. Let's forget the last year in Winnipeg. Let's forget the LA year. But those Columbus year before the infamous shift he took off, he really did develop that physicality, develop that nasty edge. And then this year, you saw him come back to life in Washington and really become the player I think everyone thought he could be with that physical edge, because it's hard to be a guy that is the guy. And I think that's the thing with PLD. And I don't think Lackovic ever is going to be the guy. But Detroit has guys to be the guy, right? They have Raymond, they have Dylan Larkin. Even a guy like Alex DeBrincat can kind of take the load off of a guy like Lackovic and not really force him to be the guy necessarily. So I think Lackovic would be, in my opinion, one of the best fits in the draft for the Wings, especially in this range.
So you don't think he's going to be there, is what you're saying?
Yeah, no, he's probably going to go right at 12.
So I want to shift off to defense, and a guy that you actually have mentioned, and one of the better defensemen that I watch as well is Radim Mrtka, 6'6", 216-pound right defenseman from the Seattle Thunderbirds in the WHL. In 43 games played, 3 goals, 32 assists for 35 points. He is as high as 9 by FC Hockey and Craig Button, as low as 16 by Smart Scouting. My notes on him, just a ginormous man. Right defense, which is something everyone looks for in some capacity. Red Wings have, but if ASP pans out, you need a third pairing right defenseman. Give a little bit to Mo Seider. He pinches well. He is a smooth skater, long stick, which gives him a lot better gap control. And maybe he, again, might need to use his body a little bit more, which is a little bit of a theme. But again, like you said, being that big and having that advantage, that can be taught.
Yeah.
It's harder to teach skating than it is to be physical. But Radim Mrtka just seems like a high energy kind of guy. He's always like pinching up into, like, I watched a lot where offense goes and he just slowly sneaks up into the zone and it falls back to him. He just nails it in. So Mrtka was a pretty exciting guy.
Yeah, Mrtka's a really interesting player because a lot of his best moments come in these little flashes of brilliance. And you mentioned those little moments where he creeps up into the play, or he's able to kind of walk the blue line. Like I remember one shift where he got the puck on the point on the left side, and he just skates backwards while someone's chasing him with the puck. And he's skating backwards along the blue line and then takes a dart down the right boards. Like, it was this weird play where he was able to keep distance from the player trying to defend him. And then he was able to kind of attack down the boards on the opposite side. And he does these little things in moments where I'm like, man, like, if you could do this more consistently, if you could find some way to put your full package together, there'd be a really, really good defenseman here. And in this class is full of defensemen who are like really awesome sometimes, and just other times you're like, well, your skating was there, but you didn't even pay attention to what was going on around you or something. Like there's these moments where a lot of the defenders in this draft class outside of Schaefer are lacking one pivotal element on a given play, and that kind of sewers them for that play. And Mrtka falls right into that category, but he has all of the physical tools you want. This is a guy that I think has more upside than most of the guys in this draft class. But like you said, maybe he does end up being a second or a third pair guy, and you're just happy getting a guy that can really win those minutes in a pretty handy way.
Well, is it like having a good third pair D-man, or having like a really good third pair D-man who should be a second pair, but like gives you a really stacked defense? I think that it's good to offset what you already have. So if you draft a guy like Mrtka, you've got Mo Seider, who is like your best defenseman, one of the better defensemen in the league. If ASP pans out, you've got your really offensive guy on the second pair. And then you could get someone like Mrtka to anchor a third pair, or to maybe shift up and play offside with ASP if he can be that more physical defensive kind of guy. So I think there's the upside there to him, but I think Red Wings just need to, with guys not panning out, like Antti Tuomisto, I don't think is going to be an NHL player. He's just not fast enough. You're waiting for Wallander to just take that next step and come up. Emil Viro really didn't do much. You need to keep stocking defensemen, and I think if you go in that range, he's probably your best defenseman in that range if he's still there at 13.
Yeah, I think the conversation for who the second best defenseman in this draft class really kind of comes down to him or Jackson Smith. And with both of them, you have these guys who are great packages. I think Jackson Smith's a little bit smoother, but Mrtka brings a little bit more of a physical edge. Jackson Smith is a better playmaker, but Mrtka is a bit of a better kind of shooter and gets into the play a little bit more in that way. Both guys have their pluses and minuses. I think not even in the defensive zone. There's a little bit of difference in them. I think Jackson Smith's one of the better transition defenders, whereas Radim Mrtka's a little bit more passive there, but then he closes really well. So there, it's two flavors of kind of different defensemen, but you're getting a good player, I think, regardless of which one. But like you said, maybe he ends up being that third pair defenseman, but he's a guy that other teams look at and they go, man, like if we had him on our second pair, like it would make our life so much easier. And Detroit has an embarrassment of riches by having him on their third pair. And that kind of softens up the minutes and whatnot. Like you said, you have ASP, who's this offensive guy. Most siders are do it all. You just let him live his life and do everything. But you put ASP in these offensive situations. You put Mrtka in defensive situations. And then you're filling in their partners. And you have Edvinsson to kind of play on that top pair. And if something's going wrong on one of the bottom two pairs, you can move Edvinsson up and down. Like he's a guy that's versatile and can play kind of anywhere in the lineup, similar to the way Mo Sider can. And maybe not at the same level, obviously, but he can be kind of your fixer on the left side, and then you can kind of fill in the gaps with other guys that maybe you envision fitting with an ASP. You get a defensive guy to fit with him. You get a guy that is maybe a bit of an offensive guy to put with Mrtka, and you build your pairs off of the foundational pieces.
I like what I've seen with Mrtka to this point. I mean, he's a good skater for being, what was it, 6'6", and the way that he kind of moves around the ice kind of reminds me. This is gonna probably get some flack, but like a Brent Burns. Brent Burns, he's not afraid. He's a pucks on net guy. It seems like that he wants to cause
every
chaos
shot,
in front.
he's tossing pucks.
Yeah,
he wants chaos in front, but it works out for him. I mean, yeah, it's juniors, but he is taking what's given to him. He's got a heck of a wrister, like a lot with what we see with Sider more often than not. And he's also not afraid to pinch up on the rush. Haven't really the defensive aspect. That's just going to have to be a learned piece as you get into the bigger leagues, because we see it with Ed, we've seen it with Mo, we're seeing it with ASP as he hit Grand Rapids. You're just going to have to make that learning adjustment and take what you got. But a lot of the times we see it, their skating can be their saving grace. And with a guy as big as he is, like it reminds me a bit of the way that Edvinsson can get up the ice, and his skating ability, which puts him in a good position overall because he's got the brains with it. And then he add the athletic ability, and all good things tend to happen. So if that is someone they're bringing in with their pick, it'd be really hard to be upset with it. I'd be intrigued how quickly, if he's going to be ready to come in. I mean, the 6'6", 216, if that's somebody they can bring to Grand Rapids and not have to worry about too much, that'd be awesome. But how long has he been in Seattle? Or
not
I guess
long.
What's his career so far in the age or the juniors?
That's what I was going to say too. Is Mrtka came over partway through this season, if I'm not mistaken. Like he didn't even start the year in Seattle, so he's a guy that I think we're seeing some adjustments that he's having to make. He's had to make this year, and there was improvement throughout the year. So I think you're hoping that, like, okay, maybe one more year in the AHL or in the WHL, where the competition's really, really good in the WHL. I think it's the best of the three junior leagues in Canada, especially in terms of preparing players for the NHL. So I think Mrtka being there for another year is great. Then you get him a year in the AHL. You try to keep him over here in North America. I know I'm a big go play pro hockey in Europe guy, but I think with Mrtka, he's done that. He's played pro hockey. He's looked pretty good in the pro hockey. I think you want to get him adjusted to the smaller ice, to the faster pace of the game here, and in the more physical elements of the game here. I think you want to get him to the AHL as soon as possible and try to get him, like, it sounds silly, but you want him to get hit a few times to kind of realize, like, oh, hey, like I'm 6'6". I'm tired of getting hit by this dude who's 6'1". I'm going to level him now. Like, I'm just going to go and take his head off because I can. And when he figures out that he's 6'6", and when he figures out that, like, he can go and take someone's head off, on top of being a good skater, on top of being a pretty decent puck mover, and a guy who's willing to shoot the puck from the blue line, and not necessarily to score, but to create havoc, like you mentioned, like, that's a pretty solid prospect there. So I think getting him, and he's on my board at number 13, so he's right where I think Detroit's going to be picking. So it's kind of a perfect spot.
So do the rules for CHL apply with him since he did play in Czechia?
I'm going to say no, even though it's super confusing because based on how they do the loan agreement and everything, it can change. But because he has played and he's an import player. If I'm not mistaken, he should be able to go into the AHL basically tomorrow when he's drafted, if the team really wanted him to. With
That's
that said,
huge.
I do think one more year in the WHL, and then you get him into the AHL at the end of the year
Mhm.
would be kind of the perfect path for him. Like he's a guy that I think, because there is a lot of tools and you're trying to put everything together, you give him a little bit of time. You're not rushing this guy. He's not going to be Mo Sider in the NHL in 2 years. Um, I think that's kind of the path you got to go with him.
I mean, you look at Detroit as a whole, really, to this point, especially with their defensemen. That's really the path they've tried to go with it. Unless
Yeah.
you're a Sider or an ASP, like they let you finish out a junior year, then they're going to let you get a pro year, whether it's in Europe or here in the AHL, 1 or 2 years in the AHL, and then they try to see where you're at by that point. So that would make sense. But if the option is there to bring him to the AHL sooner, to me that's exciting, because then you're not stuck with all the red tape of the
Yeah.
CHL nonsense.
And there's a Red Wings connection. Last season, when he played with Oshulari Trinek in Czechia, he played with former Red Wing Andre Nesterso. So there's a Red Wings connection there. And
There
there's
it
a
is,
name
baby.
that none
That was
of you have
not a
heard
name I was
in
expecting.
years.
You were like, when he played with Oceanic, I'm like, who was on that team? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Andre Nesterso. So we're gonna take a quick break. We got a couple more names. Then we have a few names for the all names team, which is always fun. So stick around. We'll be right back after a couple words from our sponsors. During our quick break, I just want to tell everyone about something that's totally changed my mornings. Strong Coffee Company. If you're like me, you love your coffee, but you also want it to actually do something for you. This is the upgrade you've been looking for. Strong Coffee isn't your average cup of joe. It's an all-in-one instant blend made for people who care about their health and performance. You're getting 15 grams of grass-fed protein, 5 grams of MCTs for long-lasting energy, and adaptogens like ashwagandha and L-theanine to help you stay calm, focused, and productive without the jitters or crash. The black blend is bold and smooth, made from organic fair trade Arabica beans, and their lattes, they've got collagen, hyaluronic acid, healthy fats, the works. It tastes amazing and helps you feel sharper, sleep better, and just show up as your best self every day. And on top of all that, they're eco-friendly too, so you can feel good about what you're putting in your body and how it's made. Check them out at strongcoffeecompany.com and use our code GRINDLINE. That's strongcoffeecompany.com, promo code GRINDLINE at checkout for 20% off. That's GRINDLINE for 20% off your order. Give it a shot. I think you're going to love it. The NBA 82 game grind is done, and now the real fun begins. The NBA playoffs are here, and it's time for the high-stakes drama, clutch moments, and jaw-dropping plays. I can't wait. If you're looking to make the playoffs even more exciting, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered as an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Try placing a bet on your favorite player's performance. Will they drop 30 points, 40, or more? It's your call. Here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Make it a playoff run to remember with DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ice.
And we're back, and we're going to talk about another name that Tony has mentioned, and that is Roger McQueen. Roger McQueen is a 6'5", 192-pound center, played for the Brandon Wheat Kings of the WHL last season. He spent most of the season hurt, so this was the big thing for Roger McQueen, who I believe at the end of last season was really high on a lot of people's boards. 17 games played, 10 goals, 10 assists for 20 points. He's still as high as 5 by EP and Craig Button, and as low as you have him at 17. So my notes on Roger McQueen, he has an insane motor. It's like he does not turn off. He's a great skater, hard, accurate shot. He has one thing that I noticed through the tape I watched, really good hands in tight. He's really good at getting the puck off quick when he's right around the goal. And just really accurate, high IQ guy. The only thing I really notice is he might need to work on just bursts of speed, like getting a little faster. I didn't see a lot of downside to him, but speed may be the one thing. And I know you mentioned like that Lyndon Lackovic may be everything that people thought Roger McQueen was. And I see Roger McQueen falling a lot because of injury, but what's your take?
Yeah, the one thing I'll push back on is the great skater part. I think with Roger McQueen, he's technically, from a technique perspective, he's a perfectly fine skater, but he just doesn't generate the power in the burst. If you give him a lap to kind of get up to speed, he can get going. Like his top speed is good. But the thing with the NHL is everything is in short bursts. Everything is those first three steps. How many times do we see a puck get bounced around the neutral zone and players are like doing suicides basically from blue line to blue line? And that's the area where Roger McQueen kind of struggles, in my opinion. I think Roger McQueen as a shooter, fantastic. He's got a wicked shot. He can absolutely laser like the puck pops off his stick. His playmaking is pretty solid. Not necessarily his area of strength, but he's a good playmaker. He can make just about any pass. I've seen him make some really nice like hook passes and different things like that. On the boards, he's physical. Like he will punish you. Like he's not afraid to use his stick and absolutely crush your spine. So he's got that element to his game as well. My big thing with him is the injury is scary and the pace and speed are concerns. And when you have a guy that is really good shooter, a physical element, has the size, a smart player, like I don't think he's a dumb player by any means. Like he gets into his pockets, he gets in the position really well. I like a lot of what he does, but the speed, the pace, and the injury are the three concerns I have. And when you have one of the two issues between speed and pace, if you're a guy that's a little slower but can play fast, I'm like, okay, well, like he's playing fast, he's making the game simplified for himself. When you have both, it's harder to offset the two, and that's where my concern comes from. I look at a guy like Jake Virtanen, who was big, scored a lot in the WHL, and didn't have the injury issues. And I'm like, is he a Jake Virtanen? Like, is that the kind of player you're getting with Roger McQueen? And if I'm being completely honest, I think Roger McQueen's a superior player to Jake Virtanen, but there is that concern, I think, and that's the worry. The big kind of slugging forward who's a great shooter. I wonder if he ends up being a winger at the next level or he ends up kind of topping out as like a third line center. I talked about this draft class kind of falling off and you're getting guys in the middle of your lineup. Roger McQueen, in my opinion, fits into that kind of category. And as for the injury, he has a pars fracture in his spine, which sounds really bad. And any fracture in your spine is kind of bad. The issue with this injury is that the biggest thing you need to be concerned about and the biggest thing you need to be kind of trying to mitigate is physical contact. Well, I'm sorry to break this to everybody, but hockey is a very physical sport, and Roger McQueen is a very physical player. So that doesn't really line up too well. He came back for the playoffs, and that was great. Everyone was stoked. I was stoked. I was like, okay, like you're starting to see him. He's still rusty. He's still a little slower behind the pace, but you expected that coming back from such a long layoff. And then he left the lineup again. And that's where I started to get really concerned. This isn't an injury like Caden Lindstrom's last year where he could get surgery, kind of take the season off and come back for the playoffs this year, and he looks good again. This is an injury where it's like, okay, are we concerned that this is now a second time he's going out? And I know there was mixed reports out on whether this was kind of related to the initial back injury or not, but yeah, you have to be concerned, especially with a bigger guy who grew fast and plays a physical game. You're putting a lot of load on your lower back, and that's where the pars fracture is, and that's kind of a concern for me going forward. I try not to let injuries affect my evaluations too much, but when it's this kind of injury, you have to take it into account at least a little bit.
Yeah, I'm no doctor, but I'm pretty sure you need your spine.
Yeah, it's like I know, like with Carter Bear, another player from the WHL. I love Carter Bear. He's there for the Wings. They should draft him, but he's a guy
it wasn't
that
on my
Achilles
list because I think he's gone.
Yeah, but he's a guy that has Achilles cut right end of this season, and everyone goes, "Well, Erik Karlsson's Achilles was cut, and he's never really been the same since." I'm sorry to break it to everybody. Erik Karlsson didn't pivot well playing defense in the first place. So that's a different concern for me. And at the end of the day, the center winger, Carter Bear, isn't going to be pivoting, isn't going to be playing defense and skating in reverse like that. So the concern is not there for me. But an injury to the back, specifically an injury like this, that contact can cause reoccurrence, it's tough to swallow. But you're going to have a team that goes, but man, that package is sick. And like, admittedly, it's a very good package. I've been lower on him most of the season than a lot of people. I never really understood the top 5 hype, but I'm really concerned with the injury, just because at the end of the day, you're investing a first round pick in this kid. You're investing what's kind of valued at millions of dollars. This isn't a free agent necessarily. You're not investing in Mitch Marner right now, but you're investing in a player, in a pick that you're hoping could be a Mitch Marner down the road. You're hoping could be a Mikko Rantanen down the road, in terms of output and production and value to your franchise. So if you're throwing a pick at 5th, 6th, 7th overall, or even 13th overall, you're hoping to get a player that is going to impact your lineup for a very long time. And availability is a really big thing. And I'm a little concerned with the guy like Roger McQueen, even though I've admitted, like, the shot, the speed, like the offensive IQ, the ability to be a really solid offensive contributor, especially as a guy that isn't at, like, you put him with a transition guy. Like, if, let's say, the Wings sign Nick Ehlers and then he ends up on Nick Ehlers' line one day, you're not worried about his speed and transition game because Nick Ehlers is going to take care of all of that for you. Dylan Larkin's going to take care of all of that for you. You allow him to get up the ice, get into his spots, and just get the puck off and be a offensive facilitator. You're not as worried about it. But a back injury already slows a guy down. A back injury already becomes a concern. Is there going to be reoccurrences? Can he kind of work his way past this and become a bit healthier and become a guy? Or is he going to have to make adjustments? Is he going to have to protect his back a little bit and be aware of that going forward? There's so many things that go into this. And I'm not a doctor. I don't have his medical records in front of me. And even if I did, I couldn't break them down for you because I don't have that training. But it's a concern. And I've talked to people both in the public sector and in the private sector that have very big concerns about Roger McQueen's health, despite the fact that he's a really good player.
Yeah, the greatest ability is availability. Ryan?
No, my worry, as you were kind of describing some of the things with him, is the hype there, but then you get a Michael Rasmussen to compare him to someone with the trade, because we saw a lot of the good things and comparables to what we're hearing with McQueen. I think in terms of McQueen, you're getting a great shot. You see a lot of good power play time, and he's not afraid to fire it at the net. But with Raz, you dealt with more of the net front, and we weren't really sure what we were going to get after he was, picked up at 9. So I'd be a little bit worried in that sense. But the more you talk about the injury, that's always going to now sit at the back of the mind, especially if you got a guy that's already 6'5". You're hoping he's going to continue to put on weight, but is he going to be afraid to use it, to your point? And how will that train? Because the bigger guys, they're going for you, especially how defensemen are anymore. You're looking at most guys out there between 6'2" and 6'5". They're not going to be like, oh, cool, you're a forward out there, I'm going to put my stick right into the middle of your back, and you're going to know it every single time you're near me. So
I was just going to say, like, how many times in the playoffs this year have we watched a guy absolutely hammer a forward in front, or just take a slice out of his ankle or something, and right, like,
Radko Gudas will turn his spine to dust.
Exactly. Darnell Nurse literally chopped Ruben's foot off the other day.
Yeah.
Like, if you start, that's the other thing too, is if you start piling injuries on the lower body of a guy like Roger McQueen, he starts to overcompensate on one side, the back flares up, then you're in a myriad of issues that all end up becoming back issues, even though it was an ankle injury that started, or a knee injury or a hip injury. It's got to be a concern for teams.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so the last guy we're going to talk about tonight, and he's the one that I think has the most wild difference in ranking, and only because of recruits. Jake O'Brien, 6'1", 170-pound center from the Brantford Bulldogs in the OHL. 66 games played, 32 goals, 66 assists for 98 points. As high as number 8 by Cosentino and the Daily Faceoff, and as low as 26 by Recruits. I've got that he is a fantastic playmaker, a two-way center, has good control, another high IQ guy. The biggest thing for him is he's 6'1". He needs to fill out 170 foot-pounds. He's a skinny dude. But I think if you're looking at a guy like Jake O'Brien, you're looking at him as a setup dude for your goal scorers. And it seems like that's the exact package you get when you draft someone like him.
Yeah, I love Jake O'Brien. I think he's really, really good. He's a guy that I think has improved a lot of the areas of his game, from skating to the physical side of it to the just the effort. I think sometimes last year when I watched him, I was like, yeah, like he was good on these 3 shifts, but he kind of disappeared for the rest of the game. And that's largely gone away from his game this year. I think Jake O'Brien is a fantastic facilitator of the puck. He's a guy that you don't have to worry about necessarily being a detriment in transition. I don't think he's necessarily the transition guy for you, but he's more than capable of being the number 2 guy. And I think you need guys like Jake O'Brien who are capable when teams start to close off on your guys like the Nylanders, the Larkins, the Nick Ehlers, who are guys who transition the puck up the ice really high level. I think you need the guy that can take the weight off of those guys, and Jake O'Brien's a guy like that. So I love Jake O'Brien. His playmaking is fantastic. The guy makes every pass look easy for the most part. He's really, really skilled. He understands how to kind of move the puck around the offensive zone, especially on the power play. So I think he's a guy that would fit in really well in Detroit. My only concern with Jake O'Brien in Detroit is, do we have too many second and third line centers? Do we have too many guys that ultimately are number 3 centers with the Casper, the Nate Danielson, now Jake O'Brien? You obviously, like with what Casper's shown over the last like half the season and at the Worlds, you're like, maybe he's the guy that kind of takes that step into that number 2 role. Maybe Jake O'Brien's the guy that's able to take that step into the number 2 center spot. But you're kind of wondering, like, do we have too many guys who should probably be number 3s? And as a team that employs both Andrew Kopp and
no, just stop. JT Compher, but hopefully not for long.
You know, Tony, we were doing really good not talking about some of these guys.
Yeah, but as a team that employs both those guys, I think everyone knows what having too many number 3 centers is like.
Well, because you got Nate Danielson who's coming in too, and you have Amadeus Lombardi who's playing center in Grand Rapids, but I think he transitions to Detroit as a winger because of just his pure offensive talent alone. I think he can do that. But I think another thing they say is you can never have too many centers, right? If everyone on your team is a center, like every forward's a center, you're going to have a pretty defensively responsible team for most of the time. Now, you might not score as much, but you have a guy who can, everyone can take a face off.
Kind of need to score goals.
Yeah, and that's the other half of it. So maybe if you're losing confidence in someone, you pick up a guy like Jake O'Brien, but he was my 4th. And we are going to pivot to what I like to call the all-name team to end out the night. And I've got 4 names, and you're just going to let me know if you have any idea who these guys are at this point. So the first guy I have is from Tolpar UFA in the MHL. That is Ivan Chekchenko.
You know what? Honestly, I have a lot of conversations with Dylan Griffin of Elite Prospects. He's been a friend for years. We worked together at Dauber. So I've heard the name. Could I tell you how good he is? Certainly not.
So his last name is TKACH-TKACHENKO. My next guy must be the son of Red Wings Jonathan Erickson, is goalie Jake Pylon from the Kelowna Rockets. Jake Pylon.
A very solid player. The guy you love having around. The grandson of Dion Phaneuf. Just a good all-around guy.
My third is from the Barrie Colts, Evan Passmore.
Yes. I've seen Evan Passmore play. If he gets drafted, I'll be surprised.
And my 4th one, and it was so good because it was 1 letter off, from Quinnipiac University in the NCAA, Drew Hockley.
What a guy.
If you take the L out of his name, he is Drew Hockey.
Yeah, he probably would be better, but I've come prepared courtesy of Dylan Griffin, who
Oh man.
puts out an all names team or all names draft ranking every year. So I pulled it up here for you. And at number 1 overall, he's got Jack Toogood, a forward for the Edmonton Oil Kings. And then the main Nordiques from the Null have a defenseman named James Bond.
No.
That's amazing. He told me he wears
Vestervos,
number 7.
I honestly could not tell you. I do not watch the Null very often. Vestervos goalie, who I have watched a lot actually, and I think he's probably pretty decent, and maybe he gets drafted. Man's Goose.
Man's Goose is a good one.
That's a good one. Vancouver Giants center, who's a solid player, and if he wasn't injured for a good chunk of the season, I think he probably goes higher than he will. Aaron Ababaifo. Then you guys got guys like Anthony Bongo, Milan Monaco, Sasha Boumedienne, who might be a first-round pick, Conrad Fonderk, plays for the NTDP, Linus Boos. Linus Boos is a great name.
I've got one for you. A guy we've been talking about in the Discord, and he's not draft eligible, but he plays for the Aberdeen Wings, and his name is Rider Many Gray Horses.
Oh, what a stud.
And they put the name across the whole back of the jersey, Many Gray Horses.
See, that's the kind of kid I draft over a Keenan Draper. Right?
Exactly.
Instead of throwing that Nepo baby pick away in the 7th round, you draft a guy with a sick name to sell jerseys.
Yeah, you don't draft an Aucoin or a Draper. You draft a Rider Many Gray Horses. I've actually reached out to the Aberdeen Wings. I'm like, do you guys sell jerseys? Like at the end of the season, will you sell me a Rider Many Gray Horses jersey? Because I need one. That is going to wrap our episode. Tony, I want to thank. Oh, Ryan has something to say.
I was going to say James Bond does not wear number 7, and he's also committed apparently to the University of Maine. So fun fact.
That's crazy. Tony, I want to thank you for coming on tonight. Where can people find your stuff?
You can find all my written work at thehockeynews.com. I'll have a new draft ranking coming out in 3 weeks, right before the draft. I had one recently come out, so probably won't be too different, but there will be some adjustments. I've already moved guys up and down just a couple weeks ago at the Hockey News post U18s. And then for any of my videos where I talked about with Lyndon Lackovic, I sat down with him, but I've also sat down with Matthew Schaefer, Michael Misa, Carter Bear, a number of these guys from this draft class, just getting to know them, and then we break down tape together, almost like John Gruden does with NFL quarterbacks, but a little less crazy. All those
much
videos
more
are
handsome, Tony.
Yes, much more handsome. Definitely a backwards hat in every video, so there's no shine off my bald head. But those videos are all at the Scouching YouTube channel. Just search Game Tape with Tony, and you'll find them all there.
Is Carter Bear related to Ethan Bear?
No, I don't think.
Okay, he didn't look too sure. Awesome. Thank you, Tony.
I remember asking about it. I don't remember it being a yes, though. But
at least not to his knowledge.
Exactly.
You can find Ryan online at RDRyan33. You can follow me online at Bringing the Wing and the Grindline Podcast online at Grindline Pod. Give a shout out to the Hockey Podcast Network for hosting us and spreading us around. Vintage Detroit, which is the only place you should get your Detroit jerseys from and work on, where we have an exclusive t-shirt collection like my Bingo Bango shirt that I made to honor the great Mickey Redmond. But you go there, click the Keep It Local tab, click the Grindline Podcast. You'll find all our stuff there. And you can check us out on YouTube. Sub to us, turn on those notifications. You'll get notified every time an episode goes live. But that is going to do it for us tonight. Again, thank you, Tony, for hopping on and talking prospects. It is always a pleasure. But you stay classy, Hockey Town.